What is up YouTube? Welcome to David's Corner. In my previous video I tested the original HTC Vive with the Ryzen 5 5600X and an RTX 3060 Ti. I compared the standard SteamVR path against OpenComposite and OpenXR with CAS at 70%. On that particular configuration, SteamVR delivered the smoother experience. OpenXR improved clarity, but it also increased CPU frame time enough to expose a CPU limitation on the 5600X. And today I'm continuing the series with the Rift S. And this headset surprised me. Despite producing a noticeably cleaner image than the Vive, it also left substantially more CPU headroom in the same game, in the same computer, and using the same Assetto Corsa graphics settings. The Rift S uses a single 2560 by 1440 LCD screen at 80 Hz, giving each eye an effective resolution of 1280 by 1440. I bought this headset on Facebook Marketplace for $60, and honestly, for someone who simply wants to try PCVR or VR drifting without having to purchase an expensive system, it remains one of the cheapest PCVR options available on the used market. Setup is straightforward. You install Meta Horizon link, connect the headset, and complete the device setup. And for these tests, I selected the prioritized quality graphics preset, and in the Oculus debug tool, I left the pixel density override at its default setting and disabled asynchronous space warp, so that missed native frames will not be hidden by synthetic ones. Assetto Corsa used the same graphics settings as the Vive test, and I left the CSP hyperthreading fix enabled. Its improvement was small in my previous testing, but it was measurable, hence why I decided to leave it on. The benchmark procedure remained 5 minutes per run. I logged hardware telemetry with Hardware Info 64, presentation cadence with frametimes, and Oculus application and compositor timing with the lost frame capture utility. One important disclosure though is that lost frame capture adds measurable CPU overhead. Normal gameplay without the recorder running felt noticeably smoother. I deliberately decided to keep it on because it gives me application CPU timing, GPU timing, and compositor data comparable in purpose to the data that I collected for the Vive test. Because of that instrumentation overhead, treat these Rift S results as a conservative worst case scenario. Real gameplay without the diagnostic running should perform somewhat better. The first test was the Bikernieki drifting session. At 80 Hz, the headset has a budget of 12.5 milliseconds. The Oculus application CPU P95 was 7.44 milliseconds, using about 60% of the available budget. On the GPU side, the P95 was 10.68 milliseconds, or 85% of the budget. And hardware utilization supports that result. GPU utilization reached approximately 59%, the BCS CPU thread reached about 69%, and total CPU utilization remained around 40%. In this workload, the 5600X was no longer the limiting stage. The system retained usable CPU and GPU headroom even while the diagnostic tool was running. So why did this perform better than the Vive? Well, Assetto Corsa has a native Oculus rendering mode. The application can submit frames directly through the Oculus PC SDK and runtime. With the Vive, Assetto Corsa uses its OpenVR mode and submits frames through SteamVR. Both paths still perform tracking, compositing, distortion correction, and frame submission. However, their scheduling and implementation are different. And on this particular game and hardware configuration, the Oculus path required considerably less CPU time. The Rift S also runs at 80 Hz instead of 90. That increases the budget from 11.1 milliseconds to 12.5. The lower refresh target and the efficiency of Assetto Corsa's native Oculus path appear to be working together here. The important takeaway is not that Oculus is universally better than SteamVR, it's just that runtime efficiency can matter just as much as panel resolution when you pair a headset with a specific computer. CapFrameX confirmed a stable 80Hz presentation cadence. Its P95% interval was only 1/10 of a millisecond above the nominal 12.5 millisecond interval. I use CapFrameX as confirmation of delivery cadence rather than as the primary measure of application CPU and GPU rendering costs. Since Bikernieki showed plenty of headroom, I decided to go ahead and play a 13-player No Hesi session in the 415 map. Without rain, the application CPU P95 was approximately 10.37 milliseconds, and that was below the 12.5 millisecond budget that I had doing this test. GPU P95 on the other hand was 15.6 milliseconds, or 25% over the budget. That makes the dry No Hesi test primarily GPU limited under these settings. It was still usable, but it was no longer delivering the native 80Hz experience as we had in Bikernieki. And rain pushed the system considerably harder. The CPU P95 rose to approximately 17.55 milliseconds. That's 40% over budget on the CPU side. And the GPU reached roughly 22.74 milliseconds, placing it 82% over budget. At that point, both sides of the rendering pipeline were under pressure, with the GPU carrying the heavier limitation. So No Hesi with Brain is beyond what I would recommend for this configuration at these graphic settings. Reducing reflections, weather effects, smoke, render quality would be necessary to have a consistently smooth native experience. So in conclusion, would I recommend this headset for a Ryzen 5 5600X and an RTX 3060 Ti? Yes, even more than the Vive. In Bikernieki, it delivered a cleaner image than the Vive, while also leaving considerably more CPU headroom. Even with the added cost of diagnostic capture, the system stayed comfortably within the application frame budget for normal multiplayer drifting. The Vive, it still has a different kind of value. A complete kit gives you base stations and controller. And that also provides an upgrade path to headsets like the Index, the Vive Pro, the Big Screen Beyond, and many more headsets to be released. So my recommendation is straightforward. If your priority is the best inexpensive headset for Assetto Corsa drifting on a mid-range computer, the Rift S takes the crown. It will give you a smoother experience. If your priority is buying into the Lighthouse ecosystem and future-proof yourself, then the Vive kit still makes sense. So the next headset that I will review in this series will be the Valve Index, and that test should help answer an important question. How much of the Rift S advantage comes from the 80Hz refresh rate target, and how much comes from the Oculus runtime itself? Well, let me know what you think in the comments of this. Leave a like if you think this was useful, and subscribe so you don't miss the index test when it comes out. Take care and safe drifting.